First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone, and on behalf of the Link2Build partner associations that include the Northern Ontario Construction Association, Ottawa Construction Association, Kingston Construction Association, Niagara Construction Association, London and District Association, Windsor Construction Association, and Grand Valley Construction Association, we want to welcome our guests to our second provincial webinar that will tackle the issues related to how we deal with price volatility and supply chain management. So the session is being recorded and will be posted on our Link2Build website. You're welcome to submit questions using the button below. If you click on the icon for the Q&A, they'll come up and we will address them the best we can, and you can enter your questions there. We will not be checking the chat line, just the Q&A button. So I'm Martha George and I'm your moderator for today. The objective of this webinar is to share insights of key partners in construction and find out what they are witnessing in material supply pricing, what their future expectations or guesstimates are, and how each are managing through this period. And we're thrilled today to have a panel of experts that will talk about their perspective on these issues. A major industrial buyer represented by Fred Jansen from the University of Western Ontario, a general contractor represented by Wayne Ferguson of EllisDon, supplier JC LeBlanc from Canam Buildings, and a subcontractor, Curtis Boyce from Modern Niagara. So I'd like to ask each of you to expand on your organization and give the audience a better insight on where you are coming from. So let's start with Fred. Fred.
Good morning. Thank you, Martha. We are Western University, located in London, Ontario, Southwestern Ontario market, London District Construction Association. It does a lot of work on campus, members of, and what we are looking at year over year is in the order of 300 projects, varying from very small ones to very large ones. We typically have major projects, 10 or 12 major projects on the go during the year. Our construction value under administration in those 300 would be roughly in the order of $300 million. And we are, like everybody around, struggling to get through the COVID lockdowns and impacts on our business. From an institutional point of view, what we have had the pleasure of doing, though, is being designated as an essential service. So while we did see a slowdown during the first COVID piece last year about this time, we have been going full tilt for the remainder of the time and trying to meet our target deadlines, both in terms of budget and schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. So Wayne, I'd like to ask you to share your background with the audience.
Thank you, Martha, as well. So Wayne Ferguson, Senior Vice President for Eastern Ontario and Quebec. We also manage our portfolio in the north as well, in Nunavut, Yukon as well. So certainly have a lot of geographical area covered within Canada through the Ottawa office. So and I think our volumes when the Ottawa office included in north around north of 400 million. So certainly a lot of the same challenges that Fred has explained here as well is what we're seeing every day, day in and day out, in terms of the projects that we're bidding and the projects that we're budgeting.
So JC, if you could give us an overview of your background, where you're coming from. JC, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's fine.
So again, I'm in business development for Canam Building and Structures. Company is about 60 years old. We are considered the largest steel fabricator in North America. We have 3 major divisions: bridge building. We do a lot of industrial, commercial, institutional. My division specifically does multi-residential developments, anything that's condo, apartment, senior housing. We supply and design about 10,000 projects a year, and we build in excess of over 100 buildings a year. It's Canadian-owned company, Canadian-run company, and my general function is to work with developers in parts of Ontario, out west, and Atlantic Canada to help them bring their projects to fruition.
Thank you, JC. Curtis.
Yeah, thanks, Martha. I'm Curtis Boyce with Modern Niagara. If you're not familiar with us, we are a national mechanical, electrical, building automation, and service provider with hubs in British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario, but we do work all over the country, big and small. We often play a role in larger infrastructure projects, healthcare projects, and as small as office fit ups, so fairly versatile that way. I personally reside in Ottawa, and I lead our major projects business unit here. But I know when I speak on behalf of my colleagues, you know, we've all felt similar disruptions and impacts with you know, pricing escalation on all of our wholesale materials and equipment, as well as, you know, significant impacts to lead times as a result of the supply chain disruptions.
Thank you, Curtis. So over the last several months, we've all witnessed what some described as unprecedented for what we are experiencing for supply and rising prices of all types of materials and products. To start with, I would like the panel to share with the audience their insight as to the specific materials and products they have been challenged to source, and what they understand to be the main factors as to what that challenge is. And could it be COVID related, or is it natural disasters such as the Texas deep freeze, or worldwide demand? So I'll put that back to the panel in terms of what you feel has caused this to begin with.
Yeah,
so
I'm happy to start, Martha, if you'd like to. So I guess I'll just start off with some of the impacts that we've seen and the material types. And I think Curtis touched on it as well. It's not just the escalation of the materials, it's the availability of the materials as well in terms of schedules. We've seen significant impacts to delivery challenges on elements as well. So obviously the ones that you always hear about, steel and wood, are very prominent in terms of the hyper escalation that you've seen. We've had issues with underground PVC piping, rock solid insulation delivery issues, brick insulation issues, drywall, quotas for drywall as well, where there's a certain quota in a specific region that's been a challenge as well. So certainly a full gamut, and I think, you know, daily there's a new surprises, some glazing and some aluminum issues as well here and there, but certainly you know, that's kind of the majority of the material issues that we've seen. And like I said, it's not only the you know, the pricing that is changing rapidly, it's also the delivery of, like, when you know, we've had cases where, you know, we've maybe missed signing off a contract or getting a contract from a client, and then a week later you get back to the contract and the delivery days change by 8 weeks, 6 weeks in some cases, right? So that's been a significant challenge as well. As to why, I think it's certainly a combination of factors. I think COVID is certainly an impact on it, where maybe manufacturing slowed down, or manufacturing facilities had COVID outbreaks. You know, there's a whole gamut. You mentioned obviously the Texas freeze, the wildfires are issues at that as well. The longshoreman strikes and the Montreal harbors as well. So I think it's a whole combination of issues that has led to this. But that's kind of what we're seeing on our side.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Wayne. So JC, I'm really interested to hear from you as well on this, because I know steel has been incredibly impacted.
Yeah, steel has been impacted for different reasons that we are told, that we understand. Just to give everybody a little bit of background here, back in November of 2020, last year, we were pricing steel projects at about $600 to $700 US a metric ton. Today in June, which is less than a year, we are now at the $1,600 to $1,800 a metric ton. So it's tripled almost, right? And the biggest reason that we see is is COVID-19, not to use it as an excuse, but what COVID-19 has done is it's changed the shopping patterns of most people out there. And we're in the business of building big structures like Python here in Ottawa, which is 3.5 million square feet Amazon building, right? So we have a handful of customers in North America that are building almost $100 billion worth of distribution centers. That accounts for over 65% of all the steel manufactured in North America in the next year. So we're having a boom like we've never seen because of the shopping habits of people. So like the Googles, the Costcos, the Walmarts, all these people are building massive, massive distribution centers because of the shopping patterns. And we really don't see a slowdown this. I think what COVID has done, COVID has actually changed the way people are thinking now. A lot of them are seeing that it's easier to order online and to get it delivered after 2, 3, 4 days instead of going to a brick and mortar place. But in regards to steel, there's a handful of companies buying the majority of the steel, and then everybody's fighting for the rest. So when you have a product and it's in such high demand, like our steel mills, the prices do go up because of that, because there's a limited amount of supplies, and it's no different than wood or anything else at the moment, right? But in our industry, we're seeing record sales because people are just building these massive, massive distribution centers. Plus, our developers are building a lot more multi-residential. They're panicked over the lumber prices going up. So we're getting calls that we would never get from people that typically build out of wood. We're now getting calls from these people and saying, listen, it costs the same to build in load-bearing steel or steel as it does in wood right now. I'd rather have a non-combustible building. So, to add to that also, I was just in a meeting before this, and usually our people that have been with Canam, they buy steel, they buy components, they've been buying for 20, 30, 40 years. They've never seen this. And for the first time, I've been told for the first time in their careers, they don't see an end to this as we know, as we see, like they just don't know what to think and what to say, because it's so volatile right now. And they can't say that in Q2 next year or Q4 this year, we're going to see a decline. What we're seeing right now, we're seeing increases week to week now. That's what we're seeing.
Wow. Curtis, could you share with the audience the impact on Modern Niagara? Or sorry, clear to the point of what do you feel is causing the price increases?
Yeah, Martha, it's a very similar theme that's starting to develop here. JC's steel is often the same steel we see in our piping. Steel prices have gone anywhere from 100 to 200% in escalation over the last year. Similar to copper, plastic piping, there's been an overall shortage of resin product that was greatly impacted by the events in Texas. So it's an international challenge, I would say, and in some cases we're fortunate to try and source materials and product that if we're lucky is manufactured in North America. In some cases, if it's coming from overseas, even if the volume is there and available, it's bottlenecking with shipping container shortages and harbor logistics. So I think also as other economies get back online and they start to invest in infrastructure, they boom. So the overall demand is going to grow. And will continue to impact us here. JC mentioned the frequency of some of these changes too. We're seeing things like, traditionally we'd get 1 or 2 annual increases in some of our wholesale materials. Now it could be as frequent as weekly. And with very short notice, where those prices come into effect, and just trying to do your best to stay informed and work with all of our wholesale and manufacturer partners to get the latest information, and then share that with our clients so we can strategize and try to make the best informed decisions moving forward.
Thank you, Curtis. So, Fred, you're at the end of it, the receiving end of it, and I'm hoping that you can share with us what this has meant for your organization, and how you've dealt with it with this with the existing projects and the ones that you're putting out on the market to bid on.
Right. Thank you, Martha. And building off of what the others have already started, you know, where JC talks about the changing the way you think. Absolutely. You have to change the way you think, the way you talk and relate to all of the project stakeholders. It has become a much more open and collaborative exercise to keep all of the projects in good order, and the companies that execute on them. We are watching supply chain stuff like we never have. We're worrying about stainless steel sinks being shipped and short ordered, and we're looking at Vitruvius China. We're looking even at AV equipment these days on the backside, because we're driven by a lot of technology in classrooms especially, and the chip manufacturing issues that are out in the global environment right now also have an effect on our local environment. One of the things that it hasn't been talked about a lot yet is you know, we've talked about materiality and supply chain, but the other part of the equation is skilled trades. We are finding a lack of skilled trades, particularly kids entering the market or entering the business, and there has to be a more conservative effort on the part of all the stakeholders, government, construction associations, colleges, universities, all have to work harder at developing talent to actually, when you do get the materials, to actually have people who can actually install them as well. And so what we are finding is that the conversations we're having on the backside of projects that are in flight already are things like getting material to campus, making sure we have space to store when we can commit to price, working with contractors to expand laydown areas, working with contractors to find storage close by if need be. Those strategies help. On the front side of projects, we have to look at our budgeting differently and allow for contingencies like we have not in the past to address the volatility. It is incumbent on us to work together with all of our partners, especially our contractors. If we're going to have success in executing projects, we have to be open with each other and make sure that we all understand what the issues are and how to get to the finish line.
Thank you, Fred. Wayne, I'm interested from EllisDon's perspective in terms of how you're handling this. How have you dealt with this on your existing projects and the ones that you're putting out to market to bid on?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think Fred touched on it a bit. I think certainly the collaboration with our clientele and with our subtrade partners has been fantastic, right? I mean, these issues come up on a daily basis. So I think being open and transparent with your client, with your subtrade partners around how things are changing has been more important than ever. Fred touched on a few things as well. Like what we really try to do is typically, you know, materials are not paid for until they're on site and installed. We have some clients that are actually willing to pay for the material advance to get it to site so you have it secure. So that's certainly been some of the stuff that we've looked at as well. You know, bid validities is certainly a hot topic right now. Still, a lot of tendering authorities want 90-day, 60-day bid validities, and I understand all the rationale behind that, the required funding, the required reviews, but it's very hard, very challenging for us to, as you've heard it from the main suppliers, two of the main suppliers in Canada, like it's hard to honor a price 7 days out, let alone 90 days out, 60 days out, right? So just having some communication around, you know, bid validities and what is possible, you know, maybe some price escalation clauses within the tenders as well to deal with that. We've had some success with certain clients around after we close a bid that the escalation has gone up on an open book basis where we've said, here's what's gone up. They've been willing to take that. Other clients are saying, we'd like you to carry that risk. You know, it just means that to some extent, we are taking a guess as to what that escalation will be. And hopefully we're on the positive side of that. But at the end of the day, the client is paying for that as well. So we do think that there is middle ground on that in terms of what works for both the client, the contractor, and the subcontractors. I think the worst thing is for a client, for a general contractor, or for a subcontractor or a subtrade partner, is to have a job start out where they're already in the red. That's just not going to be a great job or not be a great success for anyone. So I think Fred touched on that in terms of collaborating with the general contractors and the subtrades, just to make sure that everybody's up to speed. And we typically are talking weekly with our clients as to, whether the job is active or whether it's under tender, as to kind of what we're seeing. And we do get surprises every week in terms of, not understanding, how much the steel is going up. But like I mentioned, the other part is not just the price, it's the delivery schedule as well. Our delivery schedules are kind of all over the place. So as much as we can secure material and get it on site, we are doing that. So I think Fred touched on it as well, like larger laydown areas to get the material there, to lay it out so it's there and available when you do need to build it, is important as well. So those are some of the things that we're seeing, some of the things that we're working through. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a one solution fits all. It's certainly different solutions for each client. But I do think one thing it has really, continue to do is really drive that collaboration between the clients, the general contractors, and the subtrade partners as well.
Thank you, Wayne. JC, I'm interested in your perspective on this.
Just to add to what Fred and Wayne just spoke of, how we try to mitigate this with our customers is by pre-ordering product. Okay, so it's a daily battle to get all the ducks in order, because we can only order material once our design phase is done and things like that. So we don't just order a piece of steel and it comes off the shelf. Everything is fabricated. So when we order our steel and the size of steel and things like that, it goes from the design for the project that we're going to build, and then we order appropriately to that. So what we are really doing at Canam now is we're doing like what Wayne talked about, is typically clients are basically paying for nothing until the product shows up on site. So what we've done to secure product, we now have to discuss with customers that say, okay, listen, this is the price today, but in order for me to confirm this price today, you have to give me a PO so I can buy it at this. Because what the mills are doing for us, we could go and buy product for months and months and months in advance, but now because of the volatility of it, they're only allowing us to buy so much, right? So they want to make sure that the stuff we're buying is secured for a specific project and things like that. So that's what we're doing right now with our customers. And I noticed there was a question there, what Canam is doing in regards to for designers, owners looking to tender projects within the next 12 months. At the end of the day, I mean, that's what we're doing. We're trying to secure the product for the customers that we have under contract. In regards to people that we haven't secured under contract, that's a little bit more difficult, because we don't know what kind of material to secure until the design is done and things like that. So it's a battle right now. We've never seen this, right? So that's what we're trying to do to mitigate the risk to our customers as we speak.
All new to everybody. Curtis, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, very, very similar, Martha, where I would say, like, from a mechanical and electrical perspective, we've really benefited in the past from having a really robust wholesale network where we could really count in our markets, for a lot of good inventory of our line materials. Even to such a degree where, you could make an order and probably 80% of our orders could be filled and delivered to our projects within 1 or 2 days, right? And that supports our conventional sort of just-in-time delivery approach, which, is most efficient and limits the amount of clutter on site. That has all kind of gone out the window, so now we have to be far more proactive with our ordering. So we're ordering, making bulk orders with our wholesalers weeks, months in advance, that just to mitigate schedule impacts and working with our GC clients, like Wayne said, to see if we can find, lay down space on site. If that's not an option, we can explore other options for space that's close to the project site. But it's definitely key that proactive planning and ordering that we've had to shift to accommodate the overall delays with basically all wholesale materials. So.
Thank you, Curtis. You know, again, we're all sharing in this problem, and if each one of you could kind of give some best practices or recommendations to the audience in terms of what would you recommend that they do in terms of best practices. So, Fred, I'll start with you. And we have buyers of construction on this webinar. Like, what's the message that you want them to hear, or what best practices would you recommend?
Sure. I think it starts with mindset. One of the words that we use a lot around campus right now in trying to react to the things, the changing lockdowns and circumstances that we find ourselves in, is that we've got to be nimble. And we've got to be able to pivot. The things that you thought you were going to be doing, don't take them for granted. Always be looking for new, better ways of doing things. And the only way you can succeed with that is, coming back to being open and collaborative. You've got to be talking to all the partners on it. There was a question that was out there about how do you look forward to things, right? One of the things that we're finding, and some of it's just pure luck, is that we have to look at how we build things, how we construct things, what materials do we choose to do it. And so we have a major initiative coming out shortly, and it's a concrete frame building. Concrete frame comes with its own set of issues, of course, but it gets away from JC hogging all the steel for all the projects that he's been working on. And it gets away from the sawmills that have been shut down in Canada to deliver wood products. So you always got to be thinking about how you put your projects together and be able to turn on a dime.
Thank you. I am monitoring the questions, and I was hoping that at the end we could address all of the questions if everybody's okay with that.
Sure.
Okay, JC, your perspective in terms of what best practices do you recommend in the industry?
One thing that I try to explain to my customers every day, and I'm sure Wayne has similar issues, is we are not selling a widget. We're not selling, I'm buying a dehumidifier, I'm going to send it to you, you'll get it tomorrow. We are selling a process that can take months up to years to put together. So we're putting together a project that has to be designed, detailed, fabricated, and this happens over the period of 12 months or 14 months, and it just doesn't happen today. So the volatility right now, what the volatility, I can't say the word, volatility is creating right now is, by the time we get to the point that we have to price it 3-4 months down the road, well, things have changed. So when we're discussing things with customers, where we get stuck is the customer process usually slows us down. We're always ready to get the details done, to get the things done, whereas the customers are dealing with their engineers or the architects or the regulators or the building process or the approvals from what they're going to do. So what people don't understand is you just don't call us and order a building. And same as Wayne, you don't just call Wayne and say, Wayne, I want to build this building. Well, okay, well, let's take a look at it. So it's a lengthy process. And in a time like we have now, it's so volatile that sometimes some of my customers don't understand. Well, we were talking about this 6 months ago. Yeah, but things changed in 6 months. I mean, we cannot build this for free for you anymore. And the rates we were talking about 6 months ago, they just don't apply today, right? So what we try to tell our developers right now is get all your ducks in order. When we require something from you, let's expedite it. Let's get things done. Let's not sit on it, because the longer we sit on this stuff right now, the greater harm and confusion and headaches it causes down the road. So, when we're working on these projects, we want to make sure that everybody's giving us what we need to do our job so we can get back to them and then guarantee them the prices to be able to secure the materials and to build this project, right?
So we run on hyperspeed to begin with. Now it's triple hyperspeed that we're running on.
Absolutely.
Curtis, could you give some recommendations to your sector in terms of best practices or recommendations that you might have?
Yeah, you know what comes to mind, Martha, and it seems overly simple, but I think communication is key. And I think acknowledging that no individual, no company, no sector is in this alone. We're all suffering and seeing the impacts together. If we really open up those lines of communication and you know, share our expertise in every field, and you know, inevitably we're going to come up with solutions, right? To date, that's our approach. Not settle for the status quo, and try to bring creative options and solutions to the table for our clients to consider, you know, how to overcome them, right? Maybe it's considering an alternate material that, you know, they wouldn't have normally have accepted in their build, but because of maybe preferred pricing or quicker access to delivery, that becomes appealing, right? And it helps the schedule move forward. I really think you know, just thinking outside the box and providing as many options as possible to be considered by the client.
Thanks, Curtis. And Wayne, I'll end with you on this question. What best practices or recommendations would you have that you could offer?
Yeah, thank you, Martha. I think Fred and JC and Curtis really touched on, you know, all the things that we would consider best practices. I heard the word communication, flexibility, nimble, transparency, fairness. I think, and those all come into play when you're going through a situation like we're all going through. You know, I think on the communication part, I mentioned that prior, is just continually communicating with your clients, your subtrade partners on what, you know, on the reflections of the market, what's going on, the flexibility. Curtis mentioned it as well. You know, flexibility around the procurement model is one thing. Around material selection, we've had a recent case in Ottawa where actually our brick for a building was sold to the highest bidder on a different group. So we had to go back to the drawing board with a client and an architect to kind of select an alternate brick, which has never happened in my lifetime. So, but you know, it was quick, it was flexible. Everybody got to the table, and we found a new brick within a couple of weeks. And you know, no harm, no foul. Nimble, I think Fred mentioned this as well. Making quick decisions on the fly. It's not our intent to really force the procurement authority or our clients to make quick decisions, but you know, what we need to do as a general, along with our subtrade partners, is provide all the necessary information for our clients to make a quick decision. Because those decisions where we would have thought, you know, a week, it's no big deal, that is a major decision nowadays and can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then transparency and fairness, right? I mean, because we're seeing this hyper escalation, you see some of the comments in there about opportunists and all the other elements like that. We need to be transparent as to how the costs have gone up and why they've gone up, and provide that information to our clients so they can make educated decisions on it as well, and ensure that, you know, there are no opportunists out there that are trying just to collect money. I don't think that's happening. Don't get me wrong. We've been through it all on most of our projects, and we don't see that happening. And I think I mentioned it before, like, it's certainly in the client's interest, in the general contractor's interest, or the subtrade's interest, that, you know, that everybody is at least be at whole or getting their money cost in terms of what the escalation is. It doesn't, you know, there's no worse of a tone set for a project if you have a subtrade partner starting out in the red already, right? So.
Absolutely. And listening to all of the panelists, isn't this how we should always be doing business? COVID or not COVID, supply chain or not supply chain. I mean, really, if we could turn our businesses to have that kind of focus and that kind of openness and collaboration, I think it would serve us well, no matter what circumstances we're kind of dealing with. So the last question is where I want to end, and I was hoping that each of the panelists could give some insight into this question. So let's start with Curtis. What is your outlook for the remainder of 2021 and into 2022?
Yeah, the crystal ball question, eh, Martha? It's a tough one. In consultation with our wholesale and equipment vendors, I'd say there's some alignment that, you know, the disruption and the pricing increases could continue to the end of this year. There are those that still feel like we're at the peak, you know, but I remain optimistic that going into 2022, things will have stabilized here, and you know, hopefully pricing may decline a bit. As far as where we're sitting for work and opportunities coming in, new pursuits, The high-rise residential sector for us has actually been pretty stable through the last year, and there seems to be a desire to keep getting some of these high-rise resi developments going. You know, optimistic to see some bigger infrastructure projects kind of get back on the rails, you know, later this year and get moving into 2022. But it's still very much an unknown. Like when it comes to our wholesale materials, though, we're still getting intel that there are pricing increases yet to come in the coming weeks and months for sure.
Thank you. So Wayne, I'm interested in your thoughts on what you see for 2021 and to 2022, what your outlook is.
I'm glad that you went to Curtis first so he could kind of fumble his way through that. But I think we're seeing a lot of what Curtis has said as well. You know, with the stimulus that's coming out after the COVID between the federal government, particularly for us in Ontario, IO, and in Ottawa, there's obviously a lot of development coming up. I think Ottawa is really forecasted to be the busiest it's ever been. So the demand is going to be there, which will certainly impact, you know, how the prices come down or if they continue to go up. I mean, wood futures are coming down. I don't know if that's a blip or if that's going to continue to come down. But I think we are certainly forecasting the capital region to be as busy as it's ever been. Fred touched on it. You know, there is a shortage of skilled labor as well. The demand is there. So we don't see anything de-escalating anytime quickly. Is what we see, but certainly we are dependent on, you know, our subtrade partners like JC and Curtis in terms of kind of keeping us up to speed in that as well.
Thank you, Wayne. So JC, what do you see for 2021, 22?
2021 for us is, excuse me, has been a record year as it was in 2020. And what we're seeing in 2022 is just an escalation of what's going on now. We've never been so busy as we are now. Again, it all has to do maybe with the lumber industry that's pushing a lot of business our way. Our shops are full, our factories are full, our erection schedules are completely booked. We're booking into late 2022 as we speak. So, you know, people say, well, that's a good problem to have, is to be so busy. Yes, it is, but maybe it's not. So we don't see any slowdown, as Wayne mentioned. You know, after COVID, you know, I've been hearing and reading and watching the news, and they're saying this is going to be like World War II, at the end of World War II, which my father fought in. That there's going to be a boom in this country for years to come with infrastructures, with people doing different things and stuff like that. So at Canam, we are acquiring more factory space. We're acquiring more people in regards to planning for, you know, our portfolio of products that we have to build in the coming years. So there's going to be no slowdown at Canam. It's just going to be accelerated busyness there. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're being told to, right?
Thank you, JC. So Fred, I'm interested from, you're an educational institution in terms of mobility of students and classroom sizes and the change in how education is delivered. And how will that, how do you see the future for 2021, 2022?
Well, I think Curtis said it right when he used the word optimistic. We live in hope. With the world that is transpiring right now, crazy as it is, vaccines going up, COVID cases going down, and it all leads into the optimism that JC was talking about in the boom. I think there will be some kind of reckoning on the governmental side. The bills have got to be paid, and so that may temper the enthusiasm a little bit. But our particular case is such that we're looking to open up, and we are what we would classify as a residential university. The experience that students have on campus is what we sell, quite bluntly, and we see that being more important coming out of the isolation that COVID has brought on with people than not. We're looking to invest in the future above our students, of our campus. We understand that the delivery systems will change. We're doing a lot more online stuff. We're seeing a lot of international activity. Students coming in from beyond Canadian borders to avail themselves of specific pieces of education, and we will continue to likely develop that capability as well. But we are excited to see students coming back to campus and being part of that environment, and all of our facilities for education, for research, for residences, that we are all looking to the future optimistically.
Thank you. So we'll go to our question board, and this one probably I'll throw at you, Wayne. How the price volatility escalation is or can be handled at a subcontractor's level, as nearly all of the contracts with GCs have with a sub are fixed and a fixed cost contract. So how are you handling that?
Yeah, I touched on that briefly. Typically what we like to do is through the tender period or through the tender period of a project, really counsel with the client back and forth through the RFI process, whatever it may be. And like I said, some of the instructions we get back from clients is a bit different. There has been some opportunities to add price escalation clauses within the contract that say you close on a certain date, you guarantee it for a certain period. After that, if there is escalation, we will entertain that. Other client bases say we want you to take that risk, and like I kind of said, if that client base does that, then us as a general contractor working with our subtrade partners, if I was working with JC or Curtis, we would meet with our subtrade partners and ensure that they have that escalation included in their bid. And it's a bit of a guess, right? And sometimes in some cases the subtrade's going to maybe win, maybe they're going to add a contingency that's more than what the escalation occurred to be. In other cases, the client may win as well, right? But we certainly think that the better route is to have either escalation clauses in there or really minimize the bid validity period so they can actually confidently manage their price that they submitted for that project, right?
Okay, thank you. So existing, would you delve back into existing projects that are on the go that had a fixed price prior to, prior to the price escalation? It's been going for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It's a bit more challenging, certainly, when you are under contract already. I would say that the majority of our clients have been, I don't want to say reasonable, but have been willing to acknowledge that there has been hyper escalation. And in some cases, providing that I mentioned earlier about transparency and providing the documentation to really support that increase. Some of them, I'd say the majority of them have been favorable as to look at that and acknowledge that. But it's certainly a bit more challenging when you are in contract. But if you're in contract and the project is getting started where the escalation is there, some clients are of the opinion that we ought to have known the escalation was happening and include for that. Some of the projects where we have that are just finishing out where they've kind of the escalations kind of come through it. It's really dependent on the client, but we're finding that most clients are pretty reasonable about approaching that. This is unique for them. It's unique for us. It's unique for our subtrade partners in terms of the hyper escalations that's happening. It's just a lot of what we're seeing is the way that you provide that documentation, the way that you communicate that with the client. And we talked about that a bit earlier around early communication, often communication, and just, being open and honest with your client and telling them that people are being exposed to additional costs, right?
Thank you, Wayne. So this one, I think JC would be the best one to answer. The question is, has the raw material supply to the steel industry also increased at an unprecedented rate?
Has the raw material supply increased?
Yes.
Meaning?
The cost of the raw material.
Oh, the cost of the raw material, absolutely. Like I stated at the beginning, back in November, I want people to understand this part. Back in November, we were pricing our projects at $600 to $700 US a metric ton. That's what we were pricing them. Today, we're pricing at $1,600 to $1,800 a metric ton. So people say, well, geez, the price of steel has gone up three times. Well, what people have to understand is in a project, it's not all material. because what Canam does, what my division does, is we also erect that superstructure. So in that cost to my customer, it's not all raw material. There is engineer of record, there's design, there's fabrication, there's detailing, there's erection costs, there's all kinds of things. So maybe I'll give an example. So a project that would be a superstructure of $3 million, you might have, $600,000 worth of raw steel. That component has gone up quite a bit, right? So maybe instead of 600,000, it might be 800,000 now. And some of the labor charges have also gone up. But at the end of the day, just because, things have gone up that much, people think that the cost of the superstructure has gone up equivalent. It has not, right? And typically what people quickly realize is, okay, the overall project has basically gone up anywhere between 15 and 20% overall, right? So, at the end of the day, we are getting back to contracts with what Fred was talking about, and Wayne, we honor our contracts. We don't go back to customers that are under contract. So the mentality at Canam is we honor that contract and that's it. So we lose, right? But on the other side, if that contract's not honored on the other side with customers, if they delay and delay and delay, then we have clauses in there that allows us to reprice it at today's rate, right? So it's a very complicated thing for us to price right now, but we are working with our customers and we're making it happen, right? So, even with all the complexities, right?
Thank you. So I'll throw this one out. I'm not sure who wants to grab it, but does anyone feel that part of the escalation cost is attributed to supply chain? Do you feel anybody is using COVID as an excuse, or just to charge more? Does anybody want to take that one?
I'll take a crack, Martha. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit naive. I really think it comes down to supply and demand, and there's just unprecedented demand right now for these materials. I do believe that production will catch up and these different markets will stabilize a little more. Beyond the actual material costs, in some cases, some of the reason for the escalation are just shipping surcharges, right? Just to get our wholesale material, from overseas. So there may be an element of that playing in, but I haven't in any of discussions we've had, been informed of any kind of foul play like that.
Yeah, let me add to that, Curtis, a little bit if I can, and say the construction community is a very sophisticated community. There's a lot of information that is out there like this. And so to be simplistic and say, due to COVID, I'm going to increase by such and such, it'll get summarily rejected very quickly. We live in a complex world, and that openness and transparency that Wayne has been talking extensively about, without that, you can't make your case. And everybody is aware of the issues. These formats are talking about the complexity of the issues. And it's plural. There's lots of stuff going on, and most buyers are sophisticated enough to understand the complexity and to challenge the rationale and the reasoning for it. We're happy to talk about things, but we have to talk about them completely and openly.
Yeah, and Martha, I'd like to add to Fred's comments and Curtis's comments. What we're seeing a lot of, and I'm hearing from a lot of our partners and sub-trades under us, is the lack of the workers. We all hear that, a lot of workers would prefer to be at home right now collecting whatever the government is paying them rather than working. I hear this mostly every day from our partners saying that it's hard to have employees at their job sites right now because they would rather stay home. I hear this every day. Not everybody's like this, but I think it's a bigger problem than everybody's admitting to right now. Finding qualified workers right now is actually more complicated than it really is right now, right?
Thank you. Good point. This question is specific to, has been asked for Fred to answer. Have you had a situation when a contractor is prefabricating miscellaneous metals off-site and asking the university to prepay? And if so, was that structured contractually and insurance-wise?
The short answer to that specific question is no. Miscellaneous metals has not asked for prepayment on things. This issue does come up from time to time, particularly on equipment that is manufactured elsewhere, sometimes in the States, sometimes overseas. How do you go about doing it? We take each case on individually and look at the merits, the benefits, the costs, and make sure we understand what the issues are before we make a decision. We're governed by broader public sector act pieces. We do a lot of stip-sum work here that talks about delivery to site before you pay and certification and all those kind of things. So we try to balance all of that. But at the same time, we are very much interested in moving projects forward, keeping our stakeholders whole, make sure they're healthy so that they can deliver the projects that we want to, and it gets very complicated very quickly. And we try to address it on an individual specific case basis.
Thanks, Fred. This is a good segue into that. How do these pressures affect international trade agreements like the broader public sector purchasing constraints, and are we now ignoring these?
Never. It's the law. You can't ignore it. We have our own processes that are in tune to deal with these things in terms of pre-qualification of contractors. Gives us some kind of control, gives us a steady level of expectation on delivery of our projects. There's a whole bunch of good reasons for doing it, but you absolutely have to be mindful of the implications of broader public sector act in Ontario, especially. And so that said, you're planning on your planning side of the projects, you got to do that more comprehensively. You've got to attend to the volatility of our business right now by making sure your budgets have contingency in there to deal with some of the volatility. And you've got to pre-plan. The nimbleness is it's difficult in our environment, but you've got to be always asking the questions and how do we deliver, what do we deliver, respect for the process and the laws of the land and so on, and come up with each project has its unique solution, and you need to be mindful of all that stuff.
Thanks, Fred. This one may be good for you, Wayne. Is anyone on the panel using the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Producer Price Index, the PPI, data in contracts to calculate price volatility and cost escalation? If so, how difficult is it to find the applicable PPI code in the BLS reporting tables? That's the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Oh, great question. I think in terms of how we are, verifying the escalation costs, we're really, reliant on our subtrade partners to identify it to us and provide that information. We'll sit and review that with them. So whether they use that index or a different index, it's really kind of up to them and what their standard practice in their industry is. It's always not reflective of obviously the American labor market or the American index as well. But I would say that we're pretty reliant on people like Curtis and JC's group to provide us that data. We will review it and agree with it, obviously prior to reaching out to our client on those. But again, fairly dependent on the subtrade community for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Did anybody want to add to that?
No, I just to support Wayne's point, absolutely. We're forever relying on our current pricing databases and working with the information that is coming our way, and just showing that comparison. Most of our vendors are very forthcoming, and they're not just giving us a high level, these are the percentage increases. They're giving us the incremental details of every nut and bolt and what those increases are.
Thanks, Curtis. And here's another question that I think you'd be very good at answering. If we expedite a piece of equipment, example, a rooftop that won't be installed for 8 months, when does the warranty start?
Yeah, that's a good one, and it's something we've been working with a lot of vendors with, and even pre-COVID, sometimes that comes in and it's a bit of a gray area. There's a lot of conventional verbiage that it's, warranty may start on a piece of equipment, 16 months from delivery or 1 year after startup and commissioning. We look at all those situations and evaluate them on an individual basis. In some cases, our manufacturers can be a bit accommodating if that duration extends, and sometimes there could be some proactive maintenance done to maintain that warranty longevity, as long as we're doing all the right checks and balances during that construction phase. So it's fairly situational, but I haven't seen a manufacturer come out with any a firm stance or anything that has changed from that that rule of thumb.
So JC, I'll ask you this question: is stockpiling of materials becoming a known challenge?
Yes, it is. I had mentioned that earlier. Before, there was no limits on procuring material. We have a whole procuring department, and we were able to procure materials for 6 months, 7 months, a year in advance, right, for our projects, because again, these are long-term things, right? But what the suppliers are doing now with us, and we're a large buyer, we buy almost 1 million tons of steel a year. What they're saying now is, okay, we'll allow you to procure for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days at the very utmost, right? Because of the volatility of the price right now. So they don't want companies like us buying all the material at cheap, and then the price go up. And, so you're having a lot of that going on right now, right?
Thank you. So this one may be good for Fred. How do you approach a client with a price increase, and what might be the client's response? I'm assuming that this is in relation to a project that is currently in the works.
Sure. I would. So we are the client on all projects on campus, but we do report into our board of governors and so on and so forth, right? So we have processes in place if we're going to increase the project budgets and so on to deal with that kind of stuff. What I would say more specifically to the question is, don't be afraid to talk. And when you do talk, come with complete information. Be, as Wayne has said repeatedly, be open, transparent. The more information you can give us, the better decision we can make collectively. I get back to the warranty question that was on the equipment side of things. I've been in the business a fair while now, and I can count on one hand the number of times when I've had warranty issues that turned ugly. We have a very good and collaborative community of contractors here in southwestern Ontario. They like working at Western. That's great for us. That's great for them. And they live up to their obligations, even if they're not written on paper. And the obligation is an ongoing relationship. That ongoing relationship sees benefits and responsibilities on both sides of the ledger, and warranty issues, performance issues on equipment especially, and even other things. If you look after those kinds of things, whether it's written on the paper or not, you'll be in a good stead for future business as well.
Martha, I'd like to add to that. I think that what Fred said about dealing with reputable partners and reputable trades, it's the same thing for us. I mean, when we're delivering our buildings on site, pre-delivery, our warranty starts when we've completed that building. Even though we're delivering that building a year in advance, the warranty only starts after we've done our work. So if you're dealing with reputable trades and reputable companies in that, I don't think you'll ever have a problem with your warranty issues, right?
Thank you. So this one is asked of Wayne. Do you see a softening in the high-rise residential market as there appears to be a migration to outlying communities?
Yeah, I saw that one on the list there. So it's a great question. I could say, and Curtis touched on it as well. I think the residential market, if it's specific to Ottawa, and I guess I'll take it that the question was specific to Ottawa, has been fairly busy. I think we forecast and predict that is going to stay very busy as well. There was quite a deficit in available dwellings prior to going into COVID. You know, I think we are starting to come out of that. Our immigration will start to ramp back up as well as COVID dissipates as well. So we don't see a slowdown in that market. Now, what I can say is that the pro forma for the residential and rental market is certainly under pressure with the escalation. So we've seen some clients that are on the fence as to when they are going to start their project. You know, I think we talked about some of the things, looking at alternates in terms of design criteria. I think, you know, it goes back to a little bit of what JC and Curtis and Fred, all of us talked about, is skilled labor as well, right? It's as much of an impact or a factor on it as any of the escalation. In Ottawa, we have very limited resources when it comes to the structural components to a building, concrete and formwork, right? So that is a limiting factor for Ottawa in terms of the ability for all these buildings too. So, but we don't forecast a slowdown. I think you know, obviously we had a fairly busy year last year in residential. We're forecasting that this year and next year as well.
Yeah. Martha, I'd like to add to that, because that's my specialty, is multi-residential. That's what my division does. And to answer that question, we're seeing zero slowdown. We're seeing actually accelerated development and more interest in building on the outlying communities and also in the heart of the downtown. So we're seeing zero slow back. We're just seeing an accelerated amount of projects being brought to the table with more urgency now, because of various reasons, because of the cost, because of supply and demand, and because, you know, they're like Wayne attested that before COVID, there was a need for inventory, right? So I think COVID has expedited a lot of these projects to come to the table a lot quicker, right? And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're working with every day.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, JC. And this one probably is best answered by you as well. There's been a lot of talk about China taking large quantities of steel. It would normally export and using that for domestic post-pandemic recovery. If that's the case, should we worry about the US doing something similar as it launches its own $2 trillion recovery plan?
First of all, I want people to know that Canam buys no Asian steel. All steel Canam buys is in North America, and our agreements between the U.S. and Canada, when it comes to the new agreements that they've signed, would kind of stop the Americans from just hoarding a commodity like that. So those are the our new agreements that we have between Canada, Mexico, and Canada. You know, basically protect those types of industries, right? So it'd be almost next to impossible for the U.S. to say we're keeping all the steel to us, because at the end of the day, 90+% of the steel is manufactured in the U.S. Right? So they just can't say we're going to hoard all the product. And I mean, that's why we have these trade agreements, is to protect the interests of basically countries like Canada and Mexico and things like that, right? So the answer is we can't see the same thing happening in China here in North America.
Okay, thank you. We've come to the end of our time frame, but I have one very serious question. And this individual wants to know if you, Wayne, if you always have Montreal Canadiens gear in the office, or is that just to tick off the Leaf fans? That's a serious question, Wayne.
The Montreal Canadiens rule. Go Leafs, go golfing now, guys.
That's good. So there were a few other questions that I'm glad to answer offline. A lot of them, of the issues were addressed throughout, so they'd just be redundant questions. And you know, really what I learned from this, it's really about trust, communication, documentation, collaboration, being nimble, pivoting, having an open book. You know, again, it's you know, a little bit of motherhood here, but why can't we always be like this, not just during a crisis? Why can't we all just be accountable and be open and just do the right thing and respect each other? So a very big thank you to our panelists for your willingness to spend this last hour with us, and the over 300 who joined us for this webinar. This subject, it really is important to everyone in the supply chain, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to have this conversation. So to the participants, please send any suggestions you might have for future webinars. And what challenges do you wrestle with every day, and how can Link2Build as a group help you? We're glad to present more webinars and certainly invite them to you. You're welcome to visit the Link2Build website. There's a live chat box, or you can contact your local construction association or email Link2Build, info@link2build.ca. So again, a very big thank you to our panelists and to all of our participants. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to continuing these webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Curtis.